Order up! Stop! Waiting tables. Why, hello there, friends, my creative compadres, my partners in artistry. It is I, your host, Alex Curtis, and this is Stop Waiting Tables, the podcast where I interview artists of all kinds about making art and making a living. We're trying to solve the question of how do we, as artists, build full, meaningful lives for ourselves, doing what we love without burning out or just waiting around to be discovered. My hope is that by exploring the tools and tactics that other people are using to find creative success and personal fulfillment, that we can all discover something that makes our lives a little bit better. And we can stop working bullshit side jobs we hate. Fuck that shit. And so this brings me to today's guest, stand-up comedian Tanael Joachim. Tanael performs here in New York City at venues including the Gotham Comedy Club, the Stand Comedy Club, New York Comedy Club, and Eastville Comedy Club, as well as alt venues, a term that I didn't know until we had this conversation, like the Knitting Factory and Littlefield. He's appeared on Gotham Comedy Live on AXS TV and Good Day New York on Fox. He's the writer and star of the web series Unrequited, an op-ed contributor to the New York Times, and author of the book Knowing the Path. As some of you might know, I've just started doing stand-up comedy myself, so I asked Tanael a lot of questions about how the comedy scene works and his journey becoming a comedian. So if you're a comedy fan, I think that you'll really enjoy this episode. And if you're just a cool person interested in hearing about the life story of another cool person, I think you'll enjoy it too. A couple of quick notes, though, before we start. First off, this interview begins with an extended tangent about houseplants. I'm not a botanist, so I'm not 100% confident if any of the things I say about plants are accurate. That said, this is an interview about comedy and show business, not horticulture, so just please forgive me for anything that I got totally wrong. Second, due to microphone issues, there was some really good stuff that Tanael and I talked about that just wasn't able to make it into the podcast. There was one really great clip that I was able to salvage, and it didn't make sense with everything else, so it's not in this episode, but I've tacked it on at the very end of this for you to listen to if you're curious. So if you really like this episode and are hungry for more, stay tuned till the very, very, very end, and there's just a little bit of bonus stuff there waiting for you. Again, I really enjoyed talking to Tanael. I hope that you enjoy listening to our conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. And so without further ado, Tanael Joachim. Well, first off, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to be here. It's nice to be in your great apartment.
My beautiful apartment. I've been doing actually a lot of gardening in this apartment lately. Just repotted all those plants.
Okay, that's a nice little activity, a little thing to do for yourself.
Thank you.
I bought 3 new plants for my place. It kind of felt like the laziest type of pet you could have because they can talk to you, they can hug you, but you get to water them once a week. Is that the right amount of watering? I water my plants once a week.
Yeah, well, basically, I have it on my Google Calendar to water my plants every 10 days.
Okay, that's roughly the same. Okay.
Yeah, but then it changes in the summer and the winter, so you have to be willing, ready to adjust.
Yeah.
So what I find is I just, like right now, that vine right there by the window, the leaves are starting to curl. So once I kind of notice that one plant is telling me that it needs water, then I go back and I water all the plants. So everything is going to need water because one of them told me that they're thirsty. And I don't have the patience to put all of my plants in different watering schedules.
Yeah, it's not worth it. It's not. I mean, they're plants. Like, they don't have special needs. All they need is water.
Right.
So.
But I don't know. But then you have the difference between a succulent and an orchid. Orchids, I feel like, are a cruel gift to give somebody because they're so beautiful. But unless you live in Florida or some tropical place, it's just they're not going to live in your apartment. So that's really just something
So they adapted for tropical environment.
Well, they're from tropical environments. And I feel like...
And they don't have a good time living up here.
I don't think... I mean, maybe someone who's a better gardener than me could figure that one out. But I sort of feel... Whenever I get an orchid, I feel like I'm going to watch something beautiful die.
Yeah.
Because I'm really going to try. I'm going to water it. I'll put it on the same schedule as everything else. But like they're needy. Yeah.
A little bit more than... What's the least needy plant? I don't even know the name of what I have. I just went to a store and bought them.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd say that I think the least needy of my plants would be the lucky bamboo. Because
what's the luck?
It's that right there.
Okay.
Because it doesn't need any soil. It's just water and some plants sitting in it, and that's it.
They just grow in like rocks or
something?
So
that's just rocks, which is really just to keep them in place.
That is a low maintenance plant. That's crazy.
Yeah, and so as long as, you see that there's water in there, you're doing fine. The one fragility, like their one weakness, is that they don't do great with the cold. So,
I can imagine.
If it gets too cold in your apartment, you will see them die. But apart from that, I mean...
Yeah.
They need, you're low on water. I'll give you water. Great, done.
Right. Are you good enough to know all the names?
Oh no. No. But I know like those are succulents. That's a tree.
Right.
I think that's a fern. That's about as good as I got.
That's the fern?
I think so.
Okay. Because I know Zach Galifianakis had this like
between two
ferns. So I didn't know what a fern was.
Well, yeah. Ferns are apparently one of the most ancient kinds of plants. So that and the ginkgo biloba. Those are, I think, the most ancient trees.
Are these the big, tall, like 6,000-year-old kind of trees? I think I saw this article recently about how there's this 1,000-year-old trees that are kind of dying.
Oh.
Yeah, I think some of them are in Africa and there's some in maybe Australia.
Okay, I think these are different because ginkgo bilobas, I think, are mostly in China naturally.
Oh, okay. So
but then they're really hardy, so they've been planted in a lot of cities. But they're a male and female, and I think the male gets really smelly once a year, like when it basically like is pollination season.
Yeah.
So they try to only plant female. I may have that reversed, but you don't know for like 20 years until the tree's matured whether you actually planted the right one.
Tree puberty.
Exactly. Huh. Yeah. Which I didn't.
But then, if they only plant females, how do they reproduce then?
Well, I think that's the thing. Like, if you're planting them in a city, you're not really concerned about them reproducing.
You just want to have plants in the city.
Yeah, you're there's a tree.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, we're not populating a forest here. We're just there's some sidewalk and there's a tree.
Well, that's unfair. Somebody needs to stand up for those male trees' rights, and they're like pretty much going extinct. They're just planting females.
Exactly.
See, I guess there's a part of nature where women are dominating. See, that's good.
Well, yeah, I guess that's true. But maybe they're gonna pull a Jurassic Park, like a life finds a way, and they're gonna start spontaneously switching just to balance it all out.
Life always finds a way, so that's the one thing we can trust.
If we can count on anything.
Yeah.
So to make a total left turn,
we're starting to become a podcast about trees.
Hey, I don't mind that. One of my other guests is a plant father and spoke with a lot of pride about his plants.
Yeah,
and I understand it because you get to care for something. You see them grow, but
it's nice.
But it's the lowest maintenance thing. No walking, no crying, no.
I can have pets right now because my roommates are like allergic, so it's like, ugh.
What would you have if you could have a pet?
I'd have a puppy. I love dogs.
Yeah.
I don't care much for cats. They're cool, but I think they're assholes most of the time. But cats have this quality that we should actually appreciate, their independence. I think we love dogs because dogs, they rely so much on you and they love you unconditionally. But it's kind of selfish of us to they can't live without you. But cats are like, I could do with you, I could do without you. If you feed me, I'll be all right.
Right. Because I guess that's sort of true where, like, if you can have an outdoor cat that doesn't need you at all.
Exactly.
But what I think I like about dogs is that they're grateful.
Very grateful.
Cats, you still scoop their shit. You still feed them.
They do not care.
Yeah, but yeah, they never, like, they don't thank you for that. I feel like dogs are generally all coming at you.
Yeah.
Coming at you. They're just like, I'm so thankful that you feed me. This is really nice. I appreciate it.
Yeah, when you come home, your cat doesn't wag its tail and happy to see you. They're just like, oh, you're here. All right.
Right.
Come take care of me. I'm
sort
your
of
king.
Right, which makes me suspicious of the people who choose to have cats. Because who wants to nurture something like that that's so indifferent to you?
It's a lazy pet owner. Generally, people who have cats are lazy. That's what I've noticed.
Right, okay.
Generally. I don't want to make people get mad here. Vanessa has a cat. I love Vanessa, but generally, well, she doesn't have the cat anymore. She let it go. She took
Wait, like for life she let it go?
No, she sent it to Vermont.
Okay.
To her parents, yeah.
But like it goes on vacations to Vermont.
Right.
But is this cat coming back, or does she like have now a cat?
I don't know that it's coming back. I don't think so.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a big deal.
Yeah, it's a cool cat. Very like it likes space, and there wasn't enough space in her apartment for it.
Was it like having behavioral issues because it wasn't?
Yeah, he would just go through her trash and just knock everything down. It's a very independent cat.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like if you're eating, he'll just come up here and then start doing stuff to your food. Like you can push him 7 times, he'll come back and do stuff to your food. Yeah.
Got it. So I mean, this cat's just
it's a hard-headed cat. Yeah.
Now, you though, I imagine would be really good at working with this because, am I right? You have experience working with troubled teens.
I do.
Which could translate to cats. Is that a translatable skill?
Actually, yes. I've never made that connection. So that's perfect that you would find that link. Yes. Yes, actually. I worked in Utah from April 2011 to June 2012 in this program. And the average person calls it survival camp, but that's not really what it is. It's a wilderness therapy program. It's the kind of program where parents who have money and have bratty teenagers, they just send them there to kind of become better people. So they get to be in the woods and learn how to be self-sufficient, learn how to function in a group and be away from drugs. And they see a therapist once a week. And then my job and the other staff, we were guides and counselors. We just made sure they stayed alive and they didn't kill each other in the woods and teaching them life skills. Yeah.
Yeah. So does wilderness therapy work? Like, do they really walk out less shitty kids than when they went in?
They do, but there has to be some follow-up. Most of them
could relapse to being shitty again.
Yeah, because once you get back to the world and all that structure is gone from the wilderness, it's like, well, what's to stop me from doing drugs again?
Right.
So a lot of them, after they leave, they go to a boarding school, which is the best route for them instead of just going straight like to the world as it was before they came into the wilderness.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it works. Yeah. And
then what was the thing that qualified you, or how did you get this gig?
I remember after I dropped out of college, I hadn't started comedy yet. I just wanted to do something that's as wildly opposite as possible from like a day job in an office.
Right.
I remember Googling wilderness outdoorsy jobs, and then this was one of the first that popped up, and it was in Utah, and I was like, ew, Utah, I don't want to go to Utah. But I was like, you know what, let's be open-minded. It's an adventure. So I just signed up for it, and they hit me up, asked me to come train. So I was like, all right, I guess I'm going to Utah.
So they gave you survival skills.
Yeah. You go through a period of training for about a week where you get treated like one of the kids. And they teach you how to make fires. They teach you how to build shelters. They teach you how to set up a camp. And they teach you how to use a compass and a map. All those really cool skills that are totally useless in New York City. but I have them. So you learn all of that. And then once they feel like you enough, now you go to be part of a group. You still have other senior staff that kind of help you go through it, and then eventually you become a lead staff.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for you got survival camp. The kids got wilderness therapy. But now you could be dropped in, the woods of.
Yeah. I could survive for a couple of days in the woods. I have those skills.
I mean, that's really great.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, if society breaks down, I could live longer than the average person.
That's
yeah.
I mean, that's a marketable skill at this point.
Yeah.
So you mentioned dropping out of college, but let's actually roll the clock back a little further. So you're originally from Haiti.
I am from Haiti, born and raised in Haiti. Spent my whole life there, and well, not my whole life, but I left after high school.
Okay.
Yeah, to come here for college.
Got it.
It was the immigrant dream. Yeah.
Okay, so college was the thing that got you. Is that a big thing? Like, are there colleges in Haiti? I'm assuming that there are.
Yeah, of course. But like, if you're lucky enough to get a better education in like the U.S., sure, you'll take it.
Right.
Yeah. But there's good schools in Haiti. If you want to be a doctor, it's good. But there's no, it's not as varied. It's the whole immigrant thing. People focus more on the noble professions. So, if I wanted to be a comedian, if I wanted to go in art school, that's not a thing I could find.
And because they don't have that in Haiti, or that's just a thing that in Haiti you're not encouraged to be.
You're just not encouraged to be that. There's just, for good reasons. There's not a lot of money in it. I don't know a rich comedian in Haiti. Right. So it's one of those things. I don't know that many rich
comedians in New York, but.
Yeah.
Do you know some?
You don't know any? I
don't personally know. I don't know any comedians I've seen them on Netflix.
The famous ones.
Yeah, I know the famous ones, but I don't know who I'd consider no one that I've run into in my normal life. I'm like, hey, you're someone I know and are a successful, wealthy comedian.
Yeah, fair enough. I know people, but not know them. So sure.
But they exist.
Yeah, they exist.
So they're not unicorns.
They're not unicorns. So that makes it easy for you to see that. Be like, oh, this is unattainable. It's not a pipe dream. I can actually make this happen. Yeah.
Yeah. But what was the moment when you decided, or what was the inspiration to become a comedian anyway?
It was a gradual process. And now that I look back on it, I could see some of the seeds were being planted a little bit. And there was a part of me that enjoyed the idea of it. But I was set on this path I was a A student. So everything in front of me led to doctor or lawyer or engineer, something that my parents could be proud of. Right? And, but not that I would be proud of. It was just something you got to do.
Right.
But then I enjoyed having once in a while a disruptive thought and say something in class to kind of fuck up everything. I wasn't a class clown by any means, but I liked class clowns.
Yeah.
I liked them. So when I came here and I was improving my English, I started to watch a lot of TV because I came here straight after high school, and the English that I learned in English class wasn't enough to be in college and learning a new thing in English.
So the expectation is that you're going to. So you were able to get into a U.S. college, not speaking English.
Speaking basic English. I took the SAT, I took the TOEFL. I don't know if you know which one that is. It's a test for people who speak English as a second or third language, just to prove that you have proficiency in the language. Okay. So I took those two, which is I have basic enough skills, but once you come here and you sit in a class, right, and everything is done in English, then you realize, oh shit, I don't speak English, so I have to do something about this. Right. So I just started reading a lot of books and watching a lot of television, and that's when I came across Comedy Central, and I just fell in love. I just started watching it. I had a connection with comedians. I liked the way they thought. I liked the way they looked at the world. I liked their honesty. Yeah. I like the vulnerability, and it just became something gradually that I was like, oh shit, I kind of want to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who were the people that you connected with the most, or what were the shows, the comedians you were watching?
I used to watch the Comedy Central's half hours. There were a lot of these back in the day. Comedy Central Presents. That's what it was called.
Because what year are we talking?
2008,
Okay.
2009, yeah. And
so 10 years ago.
Yeah, 10 years ago. Cat Williams had a pretty hot special out at the time, and I remember watching him, but feeling like this was too much. Like, I love what he's doing, but I'm like, I don't think I can do it.
Okay.
And then one day somebody introduced me to George Carlin, who's like one of the kings of one of the best. I mean, top 2 for sure in my book.
Yeah. I feel like the top, generally what's considered the top is like Richard Pryor and George Carlin.
Yep. Those are the guys.
Yeah, those are the top 2.
And I saw him, and the way, what he was talking about, the way he was doing it, I felt like that was more my speed. I was like, oh, I could do that.
Yeah.
I could learn how to do that. Yeah. And that was like the big inspiration to me. And I was like, oh, okay. And then after Carlin, I discovered more people. I discovered Pryor after Carlin.
Right.
So that was like those 2 guys were just masters in very different directions. And after that, I discovered Louis C.K. Like, oh, Jesus, he was such a brilliant mind in the way he approached comedy and the way he was able to like push himself to talk about things that were beyond the average subject for a comedian. You know what I mean? And that was super cool and inspirational to me. I mean, it's a bummer for what's happening now. You can't really tell people Louis is your hero.
No, I know. I feel the same way. I love the comedy of, I love Bill Cosby. Bill, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, his storytelling, the way that he acts things out and makes the everyday so absurd.
Yeah. He's a master storyteller.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
But I feel like
shady person.
Yeah. And when I always have to feel like there's this massive disclaimer, because I also really look up to Louis C.K. for his content, but like the fact that you have to sneak that in really quick for his content, it's
like for his content, and also the jerking off. I enjoy that part. It's a big inspiration. So yeah, those were the people, and then obviously Chris Rock, the Dave Chappelle, and then I think my last favorite comedian that I discovered was, well, that was a while ago. He died in 2011. I don't know if you're familiar with Patrice O'Neal.
No.
He's a guy that I really, really love because he was so distinctly opinionated. He's the kind of comedian that can just be funny off of his point of view and less so his jokes. And I think that makes such a strong comedian. Like, you could disagree with whatever his point of view is, but he's so funny about it that you end up like, you know what? I accept whatever you're saying because you're so forcefully funny about it. Yeah, I love him.
That's really tricky. And that's cool that you say that, because in general, I feel like forceful it's not a word that normally works with comedy.
Right.
Because like if someone's pushing, the audience pulls away and you're like, oh no, that's too aggressive. I actually don't. Yeah. I can't take that.
But he's one of the few people that can make it work.
Yeah. And when you talk about his point of view being funny, even more than his jokes, does that mean, do you mean like his personality, or is that... His personality and the way he would look at things. Yeah. So it's the point of view.
Yeah, like his voice as an artist. Like, he had a lot of opinions that were against the grain, but they worked because the way he would present them to you and explain them to you and defend them, where you were like, all right, I see where you're coming from.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It brings you around.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's really wonderful.
Yeah, he's great.
So what college did you get into?
I went to Adelphi University. It's a small liberal arts school in Long Island.
Okay.
About 5,000 students. Yeah.
And did you declare a major when you got in?
I was a business management. I wanted something that was broad enough to get me a job if I were to finish, but also not super like noble, like doctor or lawyer. I just thought that business would give you enough life skills to do anything. So I did that.
So you intentionally dodged the noble profession.
Yeah, I just knew after high school, I was like, this is not for me. Like, I would be a doctor, but I would be miserable because it's not what I want to do.
Right.
Yeah.
So you knew you didn't want to be noble.
No, not in those terms.
Right.
Yeah.
But you hadn't discovered comedy yet.
No.
So what were you looking for at the time? Like, were there other, before you found comedy, was there like, you're like, well, maybe I could, I don't know, start a rug business?
Before I found comedy, I was pretty much gonna just maybe create a business, maybe take over what my parents have in Haiti.
What do they have?
They have a small construction business. They sell raw material and stuff like that to build houses and whatnot. It's a pretty good thing, especially in Haiti, because it's still a country that under construction. So that was good. But then once I found comedy, I realized that's not something I wanted to do. I mean, there was always a creative part of me. I'm a good writer. I enjoy writing. Mm-hmm. So I knew at some point, somewhere or another, business would kind of fall apart. But it was just a good plan to have.
Right.
Yeah.
So you never really expected to do it.
No.
But you thought that you might be able to, you wouldn't walk away from it until after you got the degree.
Right. I was still searching.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. I actually have the exact same thing. I have a business degree.
Yeah.
But that was the deal with my parents. I could study theater if I also studied something that was practical.
Okay.
And they laid out the rules of what was practical, so nothing that ended in the word studies.
Women studies.
Exactly. Hey, all of the like social sciences were rolled out. So it really was like, like math, engineering, business, econ, and business seemed like the most broadly applicable.
Yeah,
like, everything's a business.
Exactly.
And I've never used it. I mean, it's nice to sort of have on the resume, but yeah, that's something. I did that knowing that was...
Yeah, and I think we're not even outliers. I think most people, unless it's a very specific hard science, most people don't use their degrees.
Yeah.
People just get jobs off of who they know, especially in a place like New York. It's all about connections. So you just do what works because you have the basic skills to do it, but not because unless you have a PhD, then you have to work because you're very limited.
Right.
You're super smart in one specific area, so you have to work at that. But most people get a job that's just to pay the bills.
Right.
Yeah.
So how far did you get? Because your Comedy Central discovery happens when you first come to the U.S. Pre-college, right? This is like the summer before college?
Well, sort of. The summer before college. I came here in August. College started in September. Okay. So around that time, yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
And then I heard you did something in New Hampshire. Is that at the same period of time, or is that later?
A little bit later. I worked at a summer camp in New Hampshire.
Okay.
Yeah. That's after I dropped out of college. That was like my first post-dropout gig. Just needed something to do real quick for the summer. And then after that, I went to Utah.
Okay. Got it. So how far did you get in college?
2 years. So I guess enough credits for an associate's degree, I suppose. Yeah. 2 years from 2008 to 2010. And then there was the big earthquake that happened in Haiti. That was a pretty decisive factor into me dropping out of college and feeling like I was wasting my time and money and energy on something I didn't care that much for.
Yeah, what was that connection for you?
The connection of it was kind of like an existential crisis. Like, just, it's a pretty strong experience to see almost everything you know and people you know just disappear within like 5 seconds of an earthquake. So that's a thing that'll make you question, like, what are you living for? What am I doing? Like, am I having fun here? Because this is a very fragile thing. It could go away at any moment. So that's when it gave me enough courage to be like, I don't care about this degree.
Right.
I kind of want to be a comedian, so let me go and do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did that breakup with college go?
was okay. I mean, for me, it was not my parents. Obviously, I just finished and decided, no, I'm not gonna go back. Also, there was a certain amount of guilt about making my parents pay for college after there was an earthquake in Haiti.
Right.
Because everybody suffered economically. So I was like, especially the fact that I don't care about this, it would be even worse for me to make them continue to pay for it. So that was part of it. And I just dropped out and decided to not come back.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, because I could also imagine that going the exact opposite way, insofar as, you know, my country has suffered this incredible tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where I come from is in shambles. You know, my parents have suffered, you know, whatever losses.
Yeah.
And so I have to soldier on and meet their expectations.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I can imagine that even going the other way.
Yeah, it could. For some, if you were the kind of person that didn't care about college, this could be something that makes you care about it.
Right.
Because now you have, you want to, I mean, I don't know if it's about making your parents happy, but you want to kind of be responsible, be a good son or a good daughter, and you want to do it just because you have nothing left. You know what I mean? Because something so big just happened.
Right, and also sort of what you're saying about the immigrant's dream of
exactly.
The people who didn't get out, you know, don't have these opportunities, and
right,
now
I'm in a
they're
lucky
really suffering.
place.
Right, so I have to take advantage of all of those.
And pretty much do it for those who didn't get to do it.
Yeah. So that's just interesting that I think that exact same event, it's going to push you in some direction.
Yeah.
Like you really can't be the same
Absolutely.
after that. But it feels really personal how those factors are going to steer you.
Yeah.
Now, when you said that your parents weren't on board with you leaving.
No.
Did they lay any of that pressure out there, or was it at that point were you just far enough away and independent enough that you could sort of make the decision for yourself?
I mean, I definitely made it for myself. I was pretty like independent and decisive on my own.
Yeah.
But my mom didn't speak to me for about 3 months after she found out that I didn't do college anymore. Yeah, my mom is very strict and dramatic about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that was something I had to live with. But I knew eventually this was my decision. This was what I wanted, and I can't do it for them. They've had their lives.
Right.
So that's how I looked at it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then you leave college.
Right.
And you go to New Hampshire because now you're now owning your life.
Mm-hmm.
And you have your whole life in front of you.
Yeah.
But no longer have the support system of the structure of college.
Yeah, just being thrown out into the world and figuring it out.
Yeah. So what was that process? So you go to New Hampshire and you're a counselor. Was that camp special in any way? Was that kind of like a survival skills or like?
No, this was summer camp.
It was just fun. A camp.
Yeah, a camp where I was a soccer instructor, just teaching kids how to play soccer and just having fun. It was like an easy job. We ate 3 times a day. There was a lake and we'd go on the boat. Just really fun summer camp stuff. Yeah.
Right. And that gives you that gives you like 3 months or however long.
About 3 months, like,
covered.
Yeah.
And then you go straight from there to Utah.
No, from there I came back to New York, lived with my friend in Queens a little bit. Just trying to figure out what to do. I worked on a book. I self-published a book in that time. And then after that, that's when I decided to go to Utah.
Okay, well, I didn't know about your book. That's not on your website?
I don't think I put it on the... It's something that I did before comedy. And I don't know, for whatever reason, it's something that I just don't put out there that much. But it's something that I'm very proud of because this was my first big creative endeavor in English. That predated comedy. So when it happened, I was super proud of it. but I don't know why I don't talk about it as much. I'm not sure.
Well, why don't you talk about it now? So what's it called?
It's called Knowing the Path. And it was sort of... it's a nonfiction book, obviously. Sort of social philosophy and kind of me putting into a structured body of work, like different chapters about how I've looked at the world since the earthquake, and just sort of, I don't want to be arrogant saying this, but me sharing wisdom that I've learned. But it's a weird thing to share. Like, I wrote it when I was 22, so like there's not that much wisdom to be had at 22. I mean, there is a little bit, but yeah, that was like me sharing my philosophy.
Yeah,
for a better humanity. That's kind of what I was looking at. Yeah.
Yeah. What were some of the big takeaways? Would you grace us with some wisdom?
Some of it was a big part of. There's a chapter about knowledge and wisdom, and how, to me, wisdom is way more important than knowledge, because knowledge is like this. You have a lot of data. You know a lot of things. You know how to, but you don't know why. And to me, wisdom is always about why. Like, knowing how to do something is good, but should you do that thing? And why should you do that thing? And I always thought, because wisdom is usually something that comes from inside of you. Knowledge is external. It's out there. People have access to knowledge. Doesn't make them wise.
Right.
Wisdom comes from the application of knowledge in a just way. Yeah.
Yeah. I think about those two terms for myself in terms of knowledge being something that you can learn from a book, and wisdom being something that comes from experience.
Yeah.
That wisdom is deeply personal.
Right.
And it feels like with wisdom, you can read words of wisdom, but that doesn't mean
you can absorb that wisdom.
Yeah. Just because you read it, you can think it's like, oh, that's a good idea, but it's not a part of you, and that sort of internalization of
a lot of smart people aren't wise. Yeah. And there was a spirituality aspect to it too, because at that time I had just discovered like the world of spirituality, because I grew up religious, so that was a demarcation from that to kind of look at the world from a more holistic perspective, more like a Eastern view of it, like how everything is connected, how we're all one, just like there was like seeds of Buddhism in my thinking.
Yeah.
And I find that closer to what the truth might be than the basic ideas of good and evil of Christianity.
Right.
Yeah.
And what were your influences there?
I was reading a big esoteric book. It's one of those books. It's a huge book written by this guy named Manly P. Hall. He was a lecturer and like a seeker of knowledge that lived in the like early 20th century. He was Canadian who later became American. The book is called The Secret Teaching of All Ages.
The Secret Teaching of All Ages.
Very it's very mysterious title. Very, but there's a lot of stuff in it from like different cultures, from the Egyptians, from like the Greeks, from Africans, just sort of the occult a little bit, but not in a like magic or like hexing people kind of way. It's more of a knowledge that's only accessible to people you would call like an initiated, that kind of stuff. A lot of it has to do with like secret societies like Freemasons and things like that.
Yeah.
And that kind of put me into this world of not secrecy, but new ways of looking at the world in a like in a way that the average person does it. And that was a very cool and interesting thing for me to come into, and that allowed me to have more freedom and take control of my life. Yeah.
Right. And was there... So this is really the thing that's striking me right now is thinking about, so you're now in a new country, speaking a new language. Mm-hmm. You've left college behind in sort of the path that you'd been on up until this point and sort of the expectations of your parents. And now you're also leaving the sort of philosophy and faith that you grew up with, the faith of your parents, the faith of where you came from.
Yeah, it was a big shakedown, a big 180.
And is all of this earthquake related, basically? Like, was that the precipitating moment?
Some of it started before the earthquake, but the earthquake was like the big catalyst. Yeah.
And so, once you got to New York, you're now all in as a comedian. Sorry, I'm realizing that I'm getting confused. So you come to New York, you write a book, go to Utah.
I started writing the book in New York.
Okay.
I finished it around after the summer camp. Published it in February 2011. In April 2011, I went to Utah. Worked there until August 2012.
Okay.
August 2012, I came back to New York and started doing open mics.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you've actually really only been here hustling as a comedian for 6 years.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, not that that's a short time, but that's
relatively speaking, it's not a lot. Yeah.
No, that's
especially in comedy terms.
Yeah. What is more standard in comedy? Because you said in comedy terms, so I'm not sure. Like, does it,
I would say 10 years is when people go, but it's relative. But it's a good marker for most people. But it doesn't mean you need to wait 10 years to start making money or become funny.
I mean, no one's like actually holding you back.
Exactly.
Like, it hasn't been 10 years.
But there are old school people who think that way, which is kind of dumb of them. It's like, well, you're not a true comedian until you've been doing it for 10 years. It's like, what are you talking about?
Right.
So...
You're like, these laughs I'm getting right now, they're...
Right. No, with my 60s, I think I've learned a lot, and I think I'm very passionate about comedy. That's also something that I realized about life. I think it's better to do something because you're passionate about it than it is to do it because you're good at it. I wasn't good at comedy. I wasn't like a class clown. It's something that I really like, and I dedicated myself to do it. Yeah.
Right. So you start doing open mics.
August 14, 2012. That was my first open mic.
Wow, look at you. Remember the date and everything.
I remember I wrote 5 minutes of jokes. Some of them I started writing in Utah.
Yeah.
I wrote them, practiced them in front of the mirror. And then I got to New York on a Monday. On Tuesday, August 14, I went to my first open mic. I chugged 2 beers just to battle the nerves, went on stage. Got enough laughs that I was hooked. And I was like, all right, I found it.
And that's insane to me, because I'm now doing open mics.
Okay.
So I took a stand-up comedy class at the Comedy Cellar with Rick Crom. Through that class, you walk away with 5 minutes of material.
Rick Crom is a great guy, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did it, and depending on laughs, my sets. If it's a good house, it's about 8 minutes, but it's 5 to 8 depending on how I cut it.
Okay.
And doing it, you've got the 2 showcases of the Comedy Cellar, which were awesome. Then I did an open mic at Under St. Mark's.
The theater under St. Mark's?
Yeah, the theater under St. Mark's. They have a thing every Tuesday night.
Yeah.
And I got to go early enough in the night that it was still like a full crowd, and they set a really wonderful vibe there. Mm-hmm. That was a lot of fun.
Okay.
But everyone I've gone to since then has been kind of miserable.
Open mics by nature tend to be miserable.
And so it's really the part of that sounded insane to me was that you could get enough laughs at an open mic to be like, yes. Because when I go to an open mic, I'm like,
but maybe? Also it's relative because at the time I didn't know what a big, strong laugh felt like. This was my first time. So enough chuckles to me was like, oh, all right, this is working.
Yeah.
And then it does levels to it.
Right.
And then I remembered August when I started, so about October, November, I did my first bringer show. That's what they call them. Shows where the producer asks you to bring friends to guarantee your spot.
Right.
So I think I brought 4 or 5 friends, and that was the first show where I killed. And also still relative, but to me that was like the first time I was like, oh shit, this is an intoxicating feeling.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is fun. This is what it's supposed to be. And I remember getting off that night and feeling like, I think I'm a comedian. Yeah. So it was a cool thing to experience. It was like so wildly different from that first time where I thought, oh, that's chuckles, let's keep doing it.
Yeah.
And then that night I was like, all right, this is what I want to do.
So are bringer shows the antidote to the open mic?
The misery of open mics? I would say so, but you shouldn't do too many bringer shows, then you burn out your friends.
Right.
You can just keep inviting them to shows. And the people who do bringer shows, they don't care. They're just trying to make money and taking advantage of new comics.
Right.
So I did one, and then later I realized, oh yeah, you shouldn't keep doing those. Now the goal was to get good enough at comedy that you can... People ask you to be on shows without having to bring your friends, because that's what comedy is.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, where people actually think that you're entertaining enough in your own right that
exactly.
we want to have you around.
Right.
And does that just happen from, I mean, for you at least, was that just you went to enough open mics and then people knew that you were funny enough? And then
it's like a little progression where people are like, oh, this guy's funny. Let's have him on this show, blah, blah, blah. So you start doing bar shows. And enough bar shows, like, word spread around, people start to know and think you're funny. And then eventually, I remember I got my first paid spot. A friend of mine was doing something in Westchester, and he brought me. And I got $80 for 12 minutes. And I remember thinking, I just beat the system. I got $80 for 12 minutes of work, and it didn't even feel like work. So I was like, that is a worthwhile dream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask? This could be a dumb question, but it's in the technical part of the comedy.
Okay.
How long do you keep it the same set? Because
that's not a dumb question.
I feel like on the one hand, I've heard like, you write your 5, you have 5 minutes, and you basically just keep doing that and like polishing it by doing it over and over and over. But then, what's the balance of working on the same set and just getting really good at doing that material versus showing up with new material every time you go to a mic or every time you perform? How do you figure that out?
There is no straight answer to that. It varies from comic to comic and from the demands of your own goal and what your personality. Some people can, back in the day actually, a comic would have a solid 15 minute and then keep that for like at least 7 to 8 years, which to me sounds unbearable personally, because at some point you kind of become a recorder. You just like, all right, this is me and my 15 minutes. Like, I would get bored of it.
Right.
And I think getting bored of your own jokes is a sign that maybe you need new ones.
Right. I think it was whatever that special is, where it's like Louis C.K., Chris Rock, Ricky Gervais, and...
Yeah, Talking Funny.
Yeah,
and Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah, Jerry Seinfeld. They talk about, at the time that you are getting bored with your set is the time to record it, so then you can move on.
Exactly. And that's what the wisdom has become now, but it wasn't that way back in the day. Back in the day, people just coasted for a good 10 years on a solid set, which is cool if you can do it, but it just doesn't work that way anymore because comedy now is so popular. People see almost everything. So the people that saw you, let's say, in 2011, when they see you in 2012, they don't want the same set.
Yeah, no, I hear that. And that's something I've been noticing, as I'm watching more comedians now to try to get a better understanding for myself and to get inspiration for my own material. Mm-hmm. I'm spending so much time on YouTube and like going through like great famous comedians and seeing how they, evolve. And you can see how long Jerry Seinfeld has told some of the same jokes.
Jerry Seinfeld is from the old school. He believes in an act.
Yeah.
like he changes maybe 10% of his act every year, but
Yeah.
he keeps
And he
about
talks
the
about
same
that.
act. Yeah.
He talks about that in Talking Funny. I also find that I noticed that. So one of the things that really inspired me to try comedy was I saw the Martin Short, Steve Martin special.
Okay.
And
yeah, those guys are masters of it. Yeah.
And I saw it live at the Beacon, and it was the most fun I think I've had. It's in the top 5 like happiest experiences of my entire life.
Beautiful.
And so then that sent me, tracking their careers back.
Okay.
And there's some jokes that Martin Short tells in the show, which are then in his book, which he'd published, like 5 years earlier, which are then also in SCTV, like from the 80s, or
Holy
like
moly.
Jiminy Glick will say the same line in like 98, 2000, and you're like, oh, that joke's just, you've been holding on to that one for a while. Exactly.
Some people are like that, yeah.
And I find that sort of invalidating insofar as like, oh, it's like, this is hard to do, and so like for people that it could take that long to assemble material, it I find it kind of inspiring to feel like, oh, it's not expected to like all click all at once.
No.
But there's that same question then about like, but what's, especially coming up in this new generation of comedy? Well, just because, what's the balance of you need to
I think now there's
a whole
more
new
pressure to like, oh, I gotta have a new set.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is the set you have may not be at the best it could be, but then you feel this pressure to have a new one. So you kind of lose out on perfecting something because you respond to the pressure of, it could be, I don't know if it's probably not your peers, but it's the world, and like Eastville, that's where you saw me.
Yeah.
That club,
You're great, by the way.
Thank you. I performed there a lot, and there are people who come back. So sometimes I'll be on stage and I was like, oh fuck, these people know these jokes already. And
right.
Jokes aren't like songs. You can't just keep telling them and people are still happy. And
yeah, they
like,
don't want to listen
by
to
the
the
third
same
time,
joke
they're
over
like,
and over.
all right, I know. What else you got? So there's that pressure. So that's why comedians tour, and then after they tour, they kind of record it and then let me come up with something new. So I put a little bit of that pressure on myself to come up with new stuff at a decent pace. Like, people don't know how hard it is to come up with 10 new minutes of good jokes that you're happy with, that you had a good delivery of, that like the back of your hand. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So the idea of an hour of material every year that I think Louis made popular is, I think, destructive to good comedy. I think at least 2 years. A year is not enough time to have a great hour. You can have a decent hour. You can have a okay hour.
Right.
But if you want something that's good, then you just keep removing the weak parts and adding stronger parts. A year is not enough.
Right, because you need the time to build something that works, but then make it great.
Yeah.
I think I've directed theater, and the process I learned at school is you rehearse a play in 3 phases. And the first phase is just to get something up. So block it, just create a thing.
Yeah.
And then there's 2 rounds of improvement where you go through and like fill it out and detail it and change it. Mm-hmm. And so it feels like that's kind of like what we're talking about.
Yeah.
You don't just want to have a thing.
No.
You need to have a thing and then polish it and replace it and and have.
But I think now, sort of the way we're heading as a culture, where people consume things so quickly, things don't have lasting value anymore. So people treat comedy as this product, like, oh, this is this year's product, and I'm gonna go and make another product for next year, which is, I mean, it's the demands of the market, but I just don't think it's a good thing for comedy in general.
Yeah, and also I feel like there's so many comics.
Way too many comics.
And so you can kind of coast on that, I would hope, where, like, let Dimitri Martin come out with a new special this year. I'll take the extra year, because it's not like the comedy well is going to go dry, where, you're going to leave people with nothing to watch because you took extra time. Yeah.
People are like, oh, I gotta be relevant. There's a fear of becoming irrelevant if you take too long to bring something new out. People have that.
Now, I feel like that's a fear that all of us have all of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Is that is there anything to that, you think? Or is that just everyone wanting to be, I don't know, is that our egos and like FOMO, or?
I think it's a mix of our ego, but also it's influenced by the culture because people discard things so quickly. But I think it's also the reason why you should take time to let something grow and become the best version of itself, because people are so quick to put things out, the quality is going to suffer. So if you take your time to put something great out and people enjoy it and they go back to it, I think you've bought yourself a little bit more relevancy. Because now when you make something new, people are going to want to see it because what the last thing you give them was worth their time and energy.
It sounds like part of that's about if you make something good enough that people think about it after they stop watching it, you have more time to come out with the next thing because people are still thinking about this.
That's my philosophy, because anybody could get up there and do an hour of jokes, but they could kill. And then after you leave the show, you don't remember a single thing that they said.
Right.
And I think that's what entertainment has become now. It's a very ephemeral thing. People just, with binge watching, like Netflix, most Netflix shows that I watch, after I'm done watching them, I'm like, okay. But to me, the mark of a good thing is it makes you feel something, right? And you think about it after you watch it, and you watch it a second or third time. Most of my favorite books, I've read them 3-4 times.
Yeah.
And that's how I kind of look at most art, if you will, as a broader term in general. Like, if you make something that's good, it should be watched more than once.
Right.
That's the value of it.
That all makes sense to me. But with the pressure to make new material, I feel that a lot with open mics.
Yeah.
Because I feel like since it's not something where you have a real audience, it's everyone's working out new material. Yeah. So, I don't know. I felt weird going to open mics. You know, I'll go to different ones, but to go with the same set.
And sometimes you go and you see the same people. It's usually the same people who go to the mics.
Right. And so then you're like, well, you guys have already heard these jokes.
Right. But what I would say to that is open mics on a place where you're learning to develop new material as much as it is a place where you're learning how to be comfortable. Just being on stage and dealing with the fact that you're doing something that's pretty unnatural. You have a microphone and people are listening to you. I mean, public speaking is not natural for most people.
Right.
So you're just learning those skills of how do I stand up there? How do I own my space? How do I develop stage presence?
Yeah.
I think it's more about that than it is about the material.
Right.
Yeah.
So what was that like for you? Because you didn't have any sort of performance background.
No. I had basic public speaking skills. I was class president. I had given speeches before. So
class president?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. My resume is stunning. Yeah, so there was a little bit of that.
What was your platform?
The platform?
Yeah, as class president. What did you promise? Vending machines?
Turnover. Just the government, just the directors, the principals just ruined those people's lives.
vote
was my
for
platform.
Me as class
vote
president.
for me and you won't have a principal anymore. Just gonna be anarchy. No. No, the platform was kind of like, I saw myself as a bridge between, because there was always tension between the kids and the administrative body of the school, and I kind of wanted to be a bridge to make everything smoother. And there were a lot of things I wanted to do I didn't get done because our principal was kind of a dick, and he was, yeah. But I was a pretty good president. I have classmates to this day will call me president.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. It's kind of funny.
So at the same time that you're now living in New York, how are you supporting yourself? Where are you living at the time? How are you making money?
Right now I live in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. In the best apartment I've ever lived in, and I love it. I have 2 roommates. We have a really good size apartment. We have great lights. It's awesome. And I work as a handyman. I mount TVs on walls. I build shelves. I fix things for people, and they give me money. Yeah.
And how did that happen? How did you fall into handymanery?
I remember when I first started comedy, doing open mics. I worked at a real estate place. I was the assistant to this crazy real estate broker. He was insane, and I did that for maybe 6 months, and then I got sick of it. I had to do so much damage control because he would just do shitty things with people's money, and then I had to be the guy that answered to those people, whatever they called, and I just didn't like it, and I ended up quitting. And then I tried some other things. I was a bike messenger for a week, just riding your bike, delivering things. That was shitty. And I remember October 2014 was the brokest I'd ever been in my life. I had like no money. I got to a point where I was at jumping the turnstile because that's a little too risky, but I was waiting for people to open the subway door just to get in because I remember a week I didn't have money off my Metro card. Yeah. And I had to go to a show with no Metro card. And a friend told me about this thing called TaskRabbit. Yeah. And that was the first handyman gig that I got. And it was fun. I made money. And then I subsequently applied to a couple of others. So that's pretty much been my money maker. It's a good thing because you don't have a schedule that's 9 to 5. And I like that freedom as a comedian. And it's something that I don't hate doing. People get really happy when you mount a TV for them. They get really happy when you hang their art on their wall. So there's a little bit of satisfaction in it. It's not completely mind-numbing work.
Right. Yeah. Now, was there any kind of like aptitude test of like, as a handyman, you need to know how to fix a sink? And
they just had a little meeting with you and made sure like they're like, you better know at least some stuff if you're going to apply for this. You can't just be an idiot who wants to be a handyman. So I had the skills because when I was growing up, there was always construction in my house. Uh-huh. And I just spent a lot of time near those guys, the masons and the carpenters, just kind of figuring out what they do. Right. Yeah, I like learning shit like that. Yeah.
I mean, it's so fulfilling. Yeah. As you can see from the apartment, like I am a huge fan of the DIY projects and like making it yours.
Yeah, and it's cool when people come over and be like, "Oh, your place looks nice." You're like, "Yeah, I did all of this."
You're like, "Yeah, that's right. That's great." Yeah. So that was something that you already had in your wheelhouse.
Mm-hmm. So it was perfect to be like, "Oh, I'm making money off of something I didn't even go to school for. I just learned this as a kid."
Yeah, and how much to get into the brass tacks of that? Mm-hmm. So it's TaskRabbit, and what were the other ones you signed up for?
I've worked on one called Handy. There's one called Taco, and then over time I've done it so much that I've accumulated like this group of clients. People will just call me, and people will refer me to their friends. So it's been pretty self-sustaining. The one thing about it is it's scary because you don't have a paycheck every 2 weeks. Right. So sometimes there's a lot of work, and then you'll have a week where you only do one job. So that's a little scary. Like, let's say your rent is coming up. So, but it's manageable.
And what's the hourly like on that?
I get, if I work with a private, like usually when I work with offices, corporations, I get $60 an hour. Okay. Yeah. Which is pretty good pay, I think.
No, I don't know any other gig that pays $60 an hour. Yeah. What do you get, like, if you got a gig through TaskRabbit, would that still be 60 or what's...
It would be, and then they would take their fee, which is 20. Depends on the platform. Some take 15, some takes 20, and then TaskRabbit started taking 30, and that's when I kind of got fed up, so I stopped working there.
Got it. Yeah. But 60 seems to be the going rate, and the question is, are you pocketing all of that money directly? Yeah. And I imagine for your clients, so you're getting paid under the table.
Yeah. I have to do my own taxes. Yeah. Yeah, as a 1099er, I guess.
So you get 1099s from the services you're using.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have 1099s for your private clients? I guess if they're corporate, then if you're on like a proper payroll.
Yeah. Some of them will send me a W-9.
Man, 1099s blow.
Yeah, just you paying your own taxes, and I think there's a certain amount that if you're under it, you don't have to pay, but if you're above it, then you have to pay a pretty good chunk.
You mean like the percentage of how much you owe in taxes?
Yeah.
I was.
Are you a 1099er?
I was for a long time.
Okay.
Because a lot of yoga studios will make you 1099 freelance, which is bullshit. I actually heard that there was a Supreme Court case in like the New York State Supreme Court about this. That at least for yoga teachers was trying to make the argument that you can't, if you're a yoga studio and your business is entirely centered around offering yoga classes, then you can't say that these people are independent contractors separate from your business.
Right.
So yeah, like if you were working for like a handyman company,
and that's how a lot of those like Uber, TaskRabbit, those new sharing economy type of businesses, that's what they get away with, because they don't pay insurance, they don't do anything, they just use you as a contractor. So
right? But then
it's easier for them.
Right. It's ludicrous because the entire like platform of TaskRabbit or Uber, like it doesn't exist without the drivers, without the service providers.
Yeah.
So you like having these providers there it's not optional.
No,
like you don't have a business if you don't have drivers. So the drivers probably are employees.
They are employees, but they found this loophole where they treat you like a contractor because it's better for them. They can maximize their profits, but you are technically an employee.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Uber drivers should unionize.
Oh my God, I was in D.C. Back in April, and I took an Uber that cost me $1.82.
Yeah.
And I was like, this feels wrong. How are you guys making money off of this? This was weird.
Yeah.
And then they told me there was some special and Uber was subsidizing, and then they get a little bit more for it, but that's still weird. $180 for a trip?
Yeah. It's so tough. Because then as the consumer, you're like, $1.80, amazing! Right. But it's then only because we have worked 1099 gigs. You're like, but there's something not right.
Yeah.
How sustaining is the handyman thing? Could you hypothetically like see yourself doing that alongside your comedy career like forever?
Well, no. Evidently, like my job is to start making money off of comedy where I don't even have to do handyman work anymore.
Right. I mean,
for 4 years now, it's been the main source of income. Like alongside comedy money, it's been like the supplemental thing that I do since 2014. So it's been helping me.
Yeah, I mean that's awesome.
Pretty consistently, yeah. But the goal is to not have to do it and just make comedy money.
I mean, that's the dream, ain't it?
Yeah.
So what are the steps for you to between here and there, between where you are in your life now and the point when comedy is paying all the bills?
That's what's crazy about it, because there's no specific path. That's why that job is like really a dream, because if you want to be a doctor, there's a path laid out in front of you, and you got to go to medical school, you got to do a residency, you got to get a job at a hospital, like at a clinic. That's difficult, but it's very attainable. You can see the roadblocks. But comedy is, you try it and you get good at it, and then there's little things you want to do. There's little milestones. Like you would like to have a TV credit. New Face is JFL. That's a big thing.
What's that?
It's a JFL, Just for Laughs, is the biggest festival in the world.
Okay.
It's in Montreal, Canada, every July. And they have a portion of it called JFL New Faces, where they bring newer comedians who are going to be the face of comedy tomorrow.
Right.
So they just go around the country and audition people, and they pick about 20 or so comedians to go feature at that festival. And back in the day when you did that, it could lead to a career, like a legit career. Like you could get TV development deals out of it. I mean, now the market is more crowded. I know people who have done it and or just back to their regular lives.
Right.
So it's a little bit more difficult, but it's a cool thing to do as a comic.
Yeah. I mean, I feel
that's something I want to do. Yeah.
Yeah. And you've done a lot of festivals.
I've done a lot of festivals. Festivals are cool for like networking with other comedians, for exposure to industry people, but they're costly because most of them don't pay you.
Really?
No, they don't pay you.
So, because you've done them, you were in of course I don't know your full list, but I know you did one in Boston.
I've done the Boston Comedy Festival. That one they have a competition, which I don't even like, but I made it to the finals. Then obviously once you make it to the finals, you're like, fuck, I want to win this thing.
Right.
But I didn't win. But it was a really cool festival. I got to perform at my first sold out theater at 900 seats. So that was like a big highlight for me.
Yeah.
That year, yeah.
And then you've done one in LA.
I've done Riot LA Festival. I've done the Brooklyn Comedy Festival here. Eugene Mirman used to have a festival. I've done it twice.
What's that? Or who's that? Or where's that?
Oh, you don't know? Eugene Mirman. He's in Bob's Burgers.
Okay.
I don't remember which character he voices, but it's a pretty well-known name in the alt comedy world.
Okay. What's alt comedy?
Basically any comedy that's not happening in comedy clubs.
Okay.
That was the term for it. There's no real difference. Sometimes the style is a little different. It's not very set up punchline that's typical for comedy clubs, but it's really not that different. If you're funny, you can be funny anywhere. But that was what happened when the clubs were doing their thing. So a group of comedians started to create a scene that's just outside of clubs. That's what alternative comedy is.
So is that also an alternative venues?
Pretty much.
Is there? I guess what are a couple other examples? Just because I don't know. Now I'm interested.
Like Littlefield in Brooklyn is not too far from here. I don't know if you know where that is.
Yeah, and you performed there recently.
Yeah, I perform there fairly regularly. It would be considered an alt venue because it's not a club. It's not a theater, so that's pretty much what that is. Union Hall in Brooklyn, the Knitting Factory every Sunday. Yeah, that's what the alt scene is.
Okay, so those are alternative because they're not clubs.
Yeah. But
it's
not
not
alternative because the comedy is so obtuse that you don't get it. That's not what it is.
Got it. And it's not like, this is where we have the chicken jugglers. Like
right,
this isn't
right. Nah.
Okay.
Nah.
Yeah, I think about that a lot because I was really inspired by Steve Martin in his special, but his comedy as a stand-up was so different and out there.
It's not the kind of comedy you would see at a comedy club.
Yeah. So I was wondering if there's more work like that happening. But
is
there?
If you can get it, yeah.
You might
see that more at an alt venue.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can you name any alt comics? Any other ones that would be worth checking out?
Do you know the Lucas brothers? I would think of those guys at alt. They're fairly famous. Two twins, two black guys. They would be classified as alt comics. Okay. Yeah. Janine works club, so I wouldn't even call her an alt comic, but she was part of it in the 90s. Janine Garofalo, famous name, yeah.
Yeah.
But
she was at Eastville recently.
Mm-hmm. She's always at Eastville. It's hard for me to make the distinction because I just want to go on stage and perform. Right. Yeah, so I don't see it as alt versus clubs. Okay. But some people see it like that.
Got it. Yeah. So you're just, it's comedy and it's performance. Yeah. And as long as you're doing it. Yeah. So what's really cool about the work that you're doing is you've written a book. Mm-hmm. You're doing stand-up. Yeah. And you produced a web series.
I recently produced a web series, yeah.
Which is not funny.
No, it's not. It's not a straight-up comedy.
Right. I'm sorry. I don't mean to say like there were no funny moments. But it was not.
Which is terribly unfunny. It's about the Holocaust. There's nothing. That's levity.
But I
know what you mean. Yeah.
It's not your.
I didn't think of it as a comedy. I wrote it as a real thing based on my life. And I was like, you know what? I don't have to make this extremely funny. I'll just let it be. And when I was writing it, I kept having the need to cut cut out real serious moments, because comedians get really uncomfortable by real moments. That's kind of what comedy is. Comedy is this need to just cope with life by making a joke out of it.
Huh.
It's kind of a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
So when I was writing it, I just kept stopping myself from making it too jokey and be like, let's just let this be. It's fine.
Oh, okay. So your impulse was to undercut the seriousness. So
with jokes. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was a big deal to let it be serious.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so that's why it came out as this thing where like I expressed real feelings in it, and I created real characters, and it was about love. It's about, I call it Unrequited. It's 4 episodes that kind of tell a story that happened to me about this girl I loved, and then she didn't love me back, and it was like a painful thing. And that's a story that happens to most people, but I told it in a way that I think was a little fresh and interesting, and put some twist on it that make it like it's a new version of an old story.
Right.
Yeah.
And what about that was exciting to you? Because it doesn't, I know that we were saying that there isn't a path as a comedian, but whatever time you put into making that was time that hypothetically you could have been sitting around writing jokes.
Yeah.
That could have been time in what would have more clearly fallen into what looks like your main pursuit. So what was the impulse to branch out? What do you feel like?
The impulse was just because of the way the world is now. I see a lot of incredibly funny comedians struggling to make ends meet. So what I was thinking was, stand-up is my favorite thing in the world. But I do notice it's becoming not enough for like consumers or for producers or for whoever is like the gatekeepers. So my thought was, let me figure out how to do other things. Whilst I still do stand-up, but it would be nice to be able to act and write and produce. So that was my thinking. And interestingly enough, if you do stand-up, it gives you the skills for all those things. Like I learned how to write a good script because of stand-up. I learned how to tell a good story because of stand-up. And I never acted before. And I wouldn't say I learned how to act because of stand-up, but I think stand-up gives you enough of a basis to be on camera without losing your mind, and it gives you stage presence.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, this is probably a question more for earlier, but when you were learning comedy still, you're going to open mics, but then was there anything else, like, I'm working my way through the Comedy Bible right now.
Okay.
I, took class with Rick, which was really great. What were if there were any other resources or things that helped you along your learning process?
I read these 2 books that I would say were 3 that I think were crucial to my comedy learning. Richard Pryor's autobiography was great, as one of the best, so it's just something you gotta read. And I read this book called Comedy Writing Secrets.
Oh, it's the yellow. Is it that one? That yellow book right there with the fish?
Yeah.
Oh, sounds good.
Really good.
Okay.
Yeah, that book taught me a lot about the basic, like, why something is funny, how to make something that's not funny, like what people laugh at, like the basic rules of comedy writing. Like, and there are things that you just have to figure out.
Right.
Like that hard consonants are funnier.
Right.
Like chicken is a funny word just because there's a sound in there.
Yeah.
That's something that's so interesting to find out.
Yeah.
So those little things stay in your mind, and when you're writing comedy, you just go straight for a word that has that sound because that provokes people into laughter.
That was something I liked. On YouTube, there's a video of Jerry Seinfeld walking through one of his newer jokes about breakfast cereals. Mm-hmm. And there are parts in it where when he's talking through the joke and sort of why it's funny, he'll just be like, well, that's a funny phrase.
Yeah.
That's a funny word. That's a funny image.
Some words are funnier than others.
And that's, I feel like, with, at least in Rick's class, we were talking about like joke structure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so that there's like a world of logic and setup. Yeah. But then also there's just like an appreciation of that some words are funny.
Some words are just funnier than others. I mean, diarrhea is funny.
Yeah.
It's just what it is. So, and then a joke is at its basic core, it's a trick.
Right.
Like I lead you along this and then I drop it. And then you can, it's like a puzzle that you solve. And when you realize you solve it, you burst into laughter.
Yeah.
That's kind of the idea of a joke. And then from that, you can go to more places. You play with double entendre. You play with non sequiturs. You play with wordplay. There's just a lot of things in it, a lot of tools in your bag that you can use. But at its basic core, it's a puzzle you're making a person solve.
I think it's a Freud quote on his book, like on humor. But I think he describes as a joke as something that's surprising but inevitable. And I find that's something that I think about when I'm writing a joke is I need to lead you down this path enough that when we get to the punchline, it feels like, oh, of course that's where we were going the whole time. Yeah. But I need to also misdirect you enough that when we get there, it's a surprise.
Yeah, yeah.
So it needs to be the thing you didn't anticipate, but that was also totally there the whole time.
Right. You give them all the clues. That's what the setup is.
Yeah.
I'm giving you these things that they go inside your head. You don't think about them.
Yeah.
So that when we get to the punchline, it's like, oh.
It all adds up.
Yeah.
So you were saying 3 books. So we got Comedy Writing Secrets. We got Richard Pryor's autobiography. And
there's this one by an older comic. I think his last name is Ajayi. It's called Comic Insights.
Comic Insights.
Yeah. He pretty much interviews a bunch of other comedians. And they kind of... Today that would be a podcast. But back in the day, in the 80s, he just wrote it as a book where other comedians tell them what they think makes them funny.
Yeah.
And it gives you all those little snippets into like how comedians look at comedy. And as a young comic, it gives you very good tools.
Yeah.
Like I learned from that book, I learned how to follow people. Because sometimes if you see somebody do something, I remember when I was doing open mics, if I saw a comedian do well and I was going to go after them, the instinct was to kind of do what they were doing.
Yeah.
Even though it's not me.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's working for them. Clearly, that's what the room wants.
Right.
But that book taught me that whenever you go on stage, you have to take a moment to shift the energy of the room. Because the person that was there before you did whatever they did, and then they got off. Now it's your turn. So now bring the room to your speed. It doesn't matter what their speed was. Now it's me. Let's settle this and now come into my world.
And that's a skill I'm finding.
Yeah, that was a crucial thing for me to learn.
Yeah, I see that a lot at open mics because I feel like you'll see a lot of like someone does well and then the next person gets on stage and from the second they step on stage, it's dead.
Yeah, yeah.
So I feel like it happens naturally where people change the room to death. But then just to find a way to change it, but to also set an energy level.
Yeah.
Of like, I'm not going to do what that person did, but I'm going to do something else, and it still has a pulse.
Yeah. And I want you to come into it and join me and be a part of it.
Yeah, and to own your energy level and your presence.
Yeah, yeah.
What was your process of figuring that out for yourself? Your point of view, like, did you think of like a type or a character or something that was helpful to you?
No, not even. It was just, I kind of looked at it as the most true to myself I could be. I look at comedy as whenever I go on stage, I'm trying to turn the audience into my friends and I'm just talking to my friends.
Yeah.
At a bar or whatever.
Right.
So you take that moment because it's a trip that we're all on. Like the audience is not your enemy.
Right, totally.
It's just a group of people you want to entertain. But you have to have the skills to entertain them, but they also have to be willing to be entertained.
Right.
I remember one time I saw Ted Alexander, a brilliant comic. And I learned so much from that set because he wasn't having a good set. The guy before him bombed, and then he came on, and then he started doing his thing, and it wasn't working. And then he sat, and it was like, all right, guys, what's going on? Do we want to do this? And I don't think I've ever seen somebody get out of their jokes and then just talk to an audience before.
Yeah.
And that was such a cool thing for me to do. So it's like, oh, you can break the fourth wall. This is not a TV thing.
Yeah.
You can talk to these people, and sometimes something might happen in the room that shifts the whole energy. If you never address it, you'll never be able to get back to that place where people are comfortable laughing.
Right.
So when I saw him do that, I learned a lot that night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Oh shit, I had something and lost it.
Yeah, happens.
But that's, I think, interesting, and that's a fine line to walk, because I've seen at open mics people call out the audience, but in a way that feels confrontational.
Yes.
Or where they're like, even if they're not being mean or loud about it, they're like, come on, guys.
You gotta know how to do it. Sometimes your joke may not be funny. Sometimes that's why people aren't laughing.
Right. And also, if the room's low energy or like you're not landing, that's not something to come at us for.
Yeah.
So how do you...
Sometimes it means you have to raise your energy so they can match you.
Right.
Sometimes it's mirrorings. If the room is already hot, then that's easy.
Right.
But having a dead room and being able to turn it, it's going to take a lot out of you, because now you're the conductor of this opera and you have to make sure people follow you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, was the question I had. So I understand the idea of going up and thinking about like you're going to be your truest self up there and you're going to make them into your friends. But there's still an aspect of being able to see the funny parts of yourself.
Yes.
You can't just go up and just be like, this is me, guys.
Yeah. The audience will tell you what's funny about you.
Yeah. Is there a way that you have thought about that? That you can sort of sort through for yourself which parts of your experience or your thought process are like play versus what are the things that, sometimes don't go in front of an audience?
Sometimes it's obviously there's like comedy writing secrets, the basic things of a joke.
Yeah.
But also, sometimes I'll say things in the moment, and then I realize it gets a laugh, and I did not know this was a funny thing.
Right.
Just because of who you are, or the way you said it, or a face you made when you said it, the audience lets you know, oh, this is funny.
Right.
So I always recommend to every comic, you should do crowd work. Because it teaches you what's funny about you.
Should do crowd. What is crowd work?
Crowd work is you just talking to the crowd without jokes, just to figure out what you can make funny out of the interaction.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So could you do that like at an open mic, basically go do your 5 minutes, but just use those 5 minutes to talk to
Most
people?
likely not at an open mic, just because it's other comics there and they're thinking about their own shit.
Yeah.
So they're not that responsive. But when you talk to regular people, they'll give you something, and then, because when you're up there, your brain knows you're looking for funny. You're looking for laughs. Right? So you take the risk of going without a safety net, like, I'm not doing my jokes right now. I'm just talking to people. And whatever they give you, your brain goes, how do I make this funny? And then you find a way to answer it that provokes a laugh. And that way you figure out, that's what's funny about me.
Yeah.
Like, where do I go with, what's your job? Oh, I'm an accountant. What do you do with that? What does your brain do with that?
Yeah.
In a non-hacky way. Like, there's hacky crowd work. Somebody's from Jersey, you just shade on them because New Yorkers like to shit on Jersey.
Right.
That's gonna get a laugh, but it's hacky. It's not that original. Like, some professions, people are just, you shit on it.
Right.
So, but if you take the time to listen and let your brain goes to a funny place, it'll teach you a lot about what makes you funny.
Yeah. What that sounds like to me is it sounds like you're making yourself think in real time.
Yeah. You have to be incredibly present to do crowd work.
Yeah. And that you're testing what about the way you think is funny to other people.
Yeah. Yeah. And once you find that out, it'll help your comedy voice along, because then now you know what's funny about you, and you know how to present an idea to people in a way that's very you. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember, I forget which comedian was being interviewed, but someone was talking about had been accused of stealing a joke, and they basically said, like, I didn't steal that, but if you say it's yours, take it, because my best jokes are ones that nobody else can do but me.
Exactly.
Because they're coming from your voice.
Yeah.
And that's something that that's an itch I'm scratching for myself, trying to figure out what that is, because you can, taking the tricks of joke structure, you can write a joke that works, that would work if most people said it, as long as they have some idea of timing and things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, what are the things, what is the space in comedy that only you can take up, what are the thoughts that only you can get away with?
And I think crowd work makes you better at that. You find out what's original and funny about you. And let me make this distinction real quick. I think for me, there's a difference between jokes and funny things. Does that make sense? Like a joke,
because there's like the funny words,
right? And then a funny thing is just something that's just, it's a funny situation,
right?
I have a friend. He has a really funny joke about, like, he had a Patrick, that's his name. The joke is one of my favorite jokes, where he has a girlfriend that always try to make him talk dirty, and then he's uncomfortable with dirty talk, and then they'll be having sex, and she'll go, "Tell me I'm a whore," and then he goes, "Well, you know you're a whore," and that gets a big laugh every time, because to me that's just funny without necessarily being a joke. It doesn't follow a joke structure per se, but just that is funny to me, and I seek funny things more than I seek jokes.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, because that's point of view.
Exactly.
So then you're because, and that also really works for you, because a lot of what the work that you do is commentary.
Exactly. If you do commentary and you're not a one-liner guy, you want the best version of expressing an opinion or perspective about something.
Right.
As opposed to just a joke.
Right. And so then that's dependent on you having a unique perspective, and then you selling us on your point of view and your personality enough that we can buy that you have that perspective.
Right. Somebody could take my perspective and go and tell a joke that I have. It wouldn't work for them, because that's not who they are. It doesn't fit them.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's almost about pushing your thoughts and your stories, your jokes to a place that, only you live. So you're pushing them sort of out of the mainstream.
Yes.
But yet you still have to talk about things in a way that's relatable. So that's an interesting tension.
That's the skill of communication. If you're a good comedian, you're a good communicator.
Right.
You take an idea and you find the most simple and clear way to convey it to an audience. And then from there, you find the jokes in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those 3 books helped you as a comedian.
Yeah. Those. When
you were working on the web series, did you were there any resources that helped that, or any primary inspirations that you pulled from?
I had taken a CV writing class just to figure the basics of that out.
And where was that? Who was it with? Did you like it?
Gotham Writers Workshop.
Okay.
I think it's somewhere in the city. I think around Midtown West. The guy who taught me his name is Jim Mandrinos.
Okay.
He's a comic sometimes, but he does a lot of teaching about TV writing. He's been a TV writer also for a long time. So that gave me the tools just to write a script. And one thing that I learned from, like, watching TV shows is if you turn on the subtitles, you learn so much more about a TV show than just you watching a TV show. Does that make sense?
Like, I think so. Flesh that out for me.
When you have the subtitles on, you get to not only be with the actors, but you get also see what was written. So when you see, like, a line of dialogue, now not only do you hear it, but you also see it, and you can make the connection between, okay, this is a line on paper, and this is what it sounds like when a good actor or a bad actor says it.
Right.
And then it kind of teach you about good dialogue.
And so you do that. That's having the subtitles on while you still have sound on.
Yeah. I still have it on. But it's a more immersive experience for me because I kind of watch TV shows now to also learn about TV.
Right.
Not just as somebody who just wants to be entertained, but also as a student of it.
Right. I ask because I hear a lot. An acting teacher I had in college, recommended that you watch TV shows, movies with the sound off, so you can see the way that people are telling the story physically. That you should be able to understand everything that's going on without hearing it.
Yeah.
Because we're telling the story in pictures. And so I can imagine you doing that same sort of idea working.
Yeah.
Of like, with this is the action. This is the line, but then what do they do with it physically?
Right.
So same thing.
Same thing.
But you did it with sound on.
With sound. And I also, when you watch good actors, you kind of start to learn. If you're watching a good actor, it doesn't look like acting.
Right.
And that's when you see there's something happening here. Like that this person is able to inhabit and make you, because acting is, you got to believe it.
Right.
Kind of like comedy. Like when you're up there, you may say something outlandish, but I believe it because you're selling it to me.
Right.
So that's kind of what acting is too.
Oh yeah, and
so they're all connected in that type of way.
Yeah, and I also like that thinking about comedy that it's that you're something about taking them with you to an outlandish place.
Yeah,
I'm going to go outlandish, but I'm also going to take care of you and get you to trust me enough and believe in me enough that you'll follow me to this.
Comedy is very animalistic. Just the simple mechanics of it. Sometimes if you go up there and you're like hesitant and you don't believe in yourself, the audience can smell the fear. It's kind of like an alpha. If you're in the room and you have a microphone, you become the alpha for that moment.
Right.
And people will only follow an alpha if they feel like you deserve to be an alpha.
Right.
So if you know what you're doing and you believe in what you're doing, they'll be with you. But if they can tell, oh, this is just an act, that's not you.
Yeah.
It'll fall apart.
So what were shows or actors that were most useful for you to watch?
James Gandolfini from The Sopranos.
That's
The Sopranos has become my favorite show, and he's probably one of my favorite actors. Yeah. I learned so much from him. Yeah.
And so you took the class with Gotham.
Mm-hmm. The writing class for like script writing and basics of that. And I was able to put the script together, kind of learn how to story structure, just those very basic things. Like, this is what happens here. Conflict, heightened conflict, resolution, and you have an episode of a thing. You have a story that's told in a very concise ways, beginning, middle, and end. You gotta have that. Sometimes you watch a TV show and you're like, what just happened?
Right.
Because you can't see the clear... You shouldn't be able to see it, but when you get to the end, you should be satisfied.
Right.
So that's what happens when people don't have a good grasp on story structure. So that class taught me that. And so I was able to do that. I wrote it. Now I felt like I had a good script. But that's only a third of the equation. Now, can this be brought to life in a way that does justice to the script? So now I have to go get people that I think fit the characters that I created in my head. So I went to backstage and got some actors, got them to send me little clips of them doing a monologue or something that the character does. Right. And I went through a bunch of people and I eventually found some people that I felt like connected to it. So once you have that, and then that's the second part, and then you need a crew, DP, assistant director, people that have enough vision and that their vision matches yours, that they can help you put it together. It was a great experience, man, especially as a comedian, because we work so often by ourselves.
Right.
So now to be able to work with a group of, like, we're all making this happen, and we kind of remove our ego from it. Like, let's do the best version of this we can be while we're each putting our pieces in it.
So this isn't, I mean, the production value, I watched the show and it's great. And it's not something you shot on like an iPhone.
No. I shot on Sony 6500, A6500. Yeah, my DP had the cameras. Yeah.
So how do you assemble a crew? How much money did this cost? How did you raise it?
The whole thing cost me $6,500, which is fairly frugal as far as web series go, because they do cost a lot more money than that. But I wanted to make it with the least amount of money possible, so I was able to shoot in locations where I didn't have to pay for it. Like I shot in my apartment, friend's apartment, in the streets, places like that. And I just had to find people who liked it enough that they were willing to do the work for as little money as possible. So that's what I ended up finding.
And was that primarily, so you put ads in backstage for actors?
For actors backstage, but for the rest of the crew, it's like through connections. I ask people, hey, do you know somebody who does this, does that, blah, blah, blah. And then they would refer me to people, and I would like meet with them, have coffee with them just to see. Because you got to have some chemistry before you work with somebody. All the actors, I met with them after I liked their tape, just so we could see if we can work together.
Yeah.
Yeah. In movies, they call that a chemistry test. Yeah, they'll have... What's her name? Tessa Thompson was on Jimmy Kimmel talking about that. I was like, I didn't even know that's what I was doing, but that's what they do in movies. She had to be in a room with Michael B. Jordan while the directors are just there watching them interact, just to decide whether or not they have chemistry enough to be romantic interests for each other in a movie. Isn't that fucking weird?
Yeah, it is.
It's like you want to, not a date, but you just being watched to see if you're cool with somebody. It's so fucking weird. Man.
It's like a friendship test.
Yeah.
But then with people watching.
Yeah.
That all feels weird.
The cool story I got out of it was I had raised enough money to shoot it. I started shooting it. And after we shot it, I have this raw footage and I ran out of money. I couldn't edit or do anything post-production wise. So I was in this desperate place. I was depressed because I owed people money. I really... It was feeling shady about it. And then I emailed Hannibal Buress.
Yeah.
I knew him from back in the day, being around comedy. And he knew me. He'd send me to comedy, like some of my shit. And I told him, hey, man, I made this thing. I ran out of money. If you're a good one and you want to help a younger comedian, that'd be nice. And then I think 11 days passed. I heard nothing. I was like, well, that was worth trying. And then he emailed me back saying, can I see it? And I was like, oh, I don't have... finished version, but I can send you some raw footage. So I sent him some raw footage, and then 7 days later he sent me $2,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it cost you $65 and then another $2.
No, it cost me the money that I have and raised from friends, $45, and then his $2 helped me finish the thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
He's a great dude, man. A lot of people don't know this, but he's great.
Yeah. And so you just knew him from being around?
Yeah, from comedy. When he used to host comedy at the Knitting Factory every Sunday.
Okay.
That's where I met him and we became cool. Yeah.
And then you also know Wyatt Cenac?
Yeah, Wyatt used to host Night Train. That's what it was called. At Littlefield, that venue that's around here.
Yeah.
Every Monday. Yeah. He has a really fun show there. But they stopped doing it because he's got a HBO show now. So some other people took over.
Right.
Yeah.
So what is the deal with hosting a comedy show? Is that I know people who are a number of people who are hosts of different shows, and is that a big deal? I feel like I know enough people who are hosts. I just don't know if that's just like, hey, I got some friends together and I'll be the host and you guys come perform.
Hosting a show help you sharpen your skills, and it gives you a place that's yours where you know you'll have a place to do comedy every week.
Right.
And you get to develop new material because it's your show and you're comfortable there and people know you. So you can take more risk than if you were on somebody else's show just doing a set. When you do a set, you come in and you have to do a set. But when you're hosting, you can get a little bit more loose. You can play with things more.
And that actually is a place where I see when I watch the host is normally where I see people doing the crowd work.
Yeah. Hosting is a great skill if you can develop it. It makes you better in general at comedy.
Have you done that?
Mm-hmm.
What do you host on anything?
Yeah, I have a monthly show that I host in Brooklyn, not too far from here, at this place called BK9.
Do you want to plug that while you're talking about it?
Yeah, I do it every first Tuesday of the month. I'm not doing one next week because I was traveling and I had a bunch of things to do, so I canceled that. But we'll be back in January.
Yeah,
every first Tuesday. Yeah.
To be totally transparent, this episode isn't going to be live on the internet by next week, so that's
there you go.
No one's gonna. Yeah, it's not gonna work. But so from January 2019, basically onward. We'll and so that's something. How do you? Okay, so you're a comedian. You're doing open mics. You do a bringer show, maybe, but that doesn't sound like that's a thing you necessarily recommend. No,
do one or two just to get the feeling of killing in front of a crowd,
right?
But don't get stuck in it because you'll run out of friends and people will just keep using you for bringers.
Right.
And so you don't want that.
So here's my other thing that I'm struggling with at the moment is like, because open mics are generally kind of like sort of miserable.
Yeah.
That I've set the goal of I'm going to one a week. So every week I'm doing a mic and just every week I go and perform and it kind of sucks. So like how do you fill your tank up? Again, to remember that you love it when you're not performing in an environment that like gives you the laughs, which is like that's what you do it for.
Yeah.
So it feels kind of like you're going, like you're not getting fed.
Yeah, it's like taking the beatings in boxing. You know, you get beat up and then you try to get down and do it again. I would say one a week is probably not enough.
Sure.
If you want to advance at a regular speed, just so you can get more comfortable. I used to do 2-3 every day when I first started. Yeah, it was crazy. The ones that you do, are they free? Because now most places they charge you $5.
Yeah, no, there's all $5.
Yeah, so try to do more than one a week if you can. But also go to shows at clubs. If you say you're a comic, most clubs won't charge you money to watch their shows.
Oh, really?
And there's no better place. You can learn more from watching a good comedian than from being at a shitty open mic.
So the way that you fill yourself up to like stay inspired is by watching
people that are better than you.
Yeah. And that's the thing that you keep feeding the dream.
Yeah.
Because you're not getting fed as a performer, but you can feed
until the dream feeds you.
Right.
That's the
Oh. Okay, I like that. Mm-hmm. So you feed your dream, you do open mics. Yeah. Eventually somebody says, "Hey, come do my show."
Right.
And then but there are bookers.
There are bookers at clubs.
What is that, shows. And how do you meet bookers? How do they like you?
Well, the liking part is sometimes you have nothing to do with that. Some people like you, some people don't. But a lot of comedians are not very good at social skills. Which is unfortunate because our job is, once you're off stage, the rest of it is socialization. You have to talk to people. You have to talk to bookers. You have to find who is booking what show so you can send them a message or an email and asking to be on it.
Right.
You got to do all of that, and that's happening off stage. So you have to. It's inevitable. You got to have those skills. You got to be able to socialize. When there's comedian parties, go to them. When there's a big show, go there, show a face. Yeah, there's a bunch of holiday parties coming up right now at clubs, because it's like comedians are lonely and loners for the most part. So we try to get together and do things to have a sense of community.
Yeah, I know when I went to the open mic at the Climate, it was a Laughing Buddha show. They talked about like showcases that they have coming up. Mm-hmm. Is that a worthwhile thing to do? Basically, how do you bridge the gap from, open micing to then like knowing bookers or like getting booked anywhere or like, because there is sort of, I feel like the answer I hear, which could be true, which is just that there's like a magic of eventually people know you when someone asks. Which feels kind of passive.
It's passive. You have to get out there. I would say do 1 or 2 bringer shows and make sure you kill so that you leave an impression.
Right.
And that'll spread around. There'll be words out there like, oh, this so-and-so is funny. People know so-and-so, so that's a thing. And from that, you have to stay proactive. If somebody saw you have a good set and you remember that person, email them on Facebook or whatever.
Right.
if you know they have a show.
Okay. Yeah. So like, hey, Wyatt Cenac, you were at my show. I know you have a show.
Right.
I'd love to be in your show.
You have to do those things. They may not, feel natural. You might be shy. You might not be the kind of person that asks for things, but you have to. Right. Otherwise, people just aren't going to give them to you.
Right. Yeah. And then there are tapes that you need to have at a certain point? Yeah. What are the lengths of those, and at what point in a career do you need them?
For submissions, usually most festivals, they want a 5 to 10 minute tape. So whenever you're performing, just for yourself in general, you want to tape it so you can look at it and see what you're doing wrong, what you want to improve on, and what you're doing right. You want to do all of that by yourself, but you do want to have a couple of good tapes on hand so that when people ask to see you performing in front of a crowd, you can be able to say, here's a tape of what I did at such and such venue. There was a good crowd, and this is how they responded to me.
Right. Yeah. And so that's 5 to 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. And then you've recorded an hour. Is that right? Yeah. What are you doing with that now?
It's the draft for what I want my hour to be. I wanted to record it just to see what it is at that particular moment in time, and then I keep performing that material so that maybe 6 or 7 months later I can do and record another hour and see what it is, and then from there I can maybe tape a special or record an album and see what happens with it. Yeah. Right.
And are those all things that are produced independently? Like, would you?
It depends on where you are in your career. If you have enough buzz, somebody might come up to you and try to produce it for you. Right. Netflix might reach out to you. Those lucky things may happen, but if it's not happening, you have to be proactive with your career. You have to find a way to make it independently. Yeah.
Right. And so then, is there an element of you make a really good 15-minute tape, or you make a really good hour, and then you shop it around, or is there a place that you could basically do the equivalent of self-publishing?
There are places where you can do that. I think there's a website called Comedy Dynamics that produces specials and albums for less well-known comedians. So that's a good place to do it. Probably not going to make you famous, but it'll give you enough money to at least break even, I think.
Okay. And so at that point, then you're really doing it just for like social proof, just to be able to say like, I have an album and you can go find it. Yeah. But then you have to retire all that material, basically.
If it wasn't seen by that many people, then you don't have to retire.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I guess that's the virtue of being, unknown.
Exactly.
So you're like, well, I did it, but if you record an album and no one's there to hear it, did it really make a sound?
Yeah, it's a crazy career, man. But it's fun. When it works, I don't think there's anything like it. Yeah. When I'm on stage and everything is clicking, it's the greatest feeling in the world. Yeah.
Yeah. I get that. So so stand-up's cooking. Yeah. You've got your web series. Mm-hmm. And I know you've also written a pilot. Yeah. Before we dig into that, though, I just want to linger on the web series for a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. So you made it. Yeah. It's on your website. Mm-hmm. And now, is that just what happens? Is there anything else?
I've submitted it to festivals. It's a proof of an idea that you can use to get a writing job. Yeah. You can use it to show people what a pilot of a show would look like for you. You can use it for a whole bunch of things. But it's kind of like a business card. It's a good thing to have.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting to thinking about what is something that you do to build a portfolio of work, which is kind of just beefing up your resume for the eventual job. Right. Versus what is the actual product. Mm-hmm. That's the thing that you're going to shop around and push. Yeah. And I think it's tough because on the one hand, it's worthwhile to make things that will help you eventually. Mm-hmm. But you also need to be getting something from them now. Yeah. So that there's a reward to doing it. Mm-hmm. And so that it's not
the best reward for me, like immediately when we finished it, I set up this screening party, and had all my comedy fans and friends came out, and we all watched it as a group, and then we had a Q&A, and that was so fucking rewarding. Just the way people reacted to it, the sort of questions they asked about it, the way they connected to it. To me, that was like, oh, That's why we do things.
Yeah.
There's no other reason. Like everything else is an added benefit, but you really do it for that. I was watching people watch my things and the way they're reacting to it. That made me feel good. Yeah.
What's the main way that you relate to and mobilize your fans?
I don't know. I'm probably not the best person at that. I mean, I have a mailing list.
Okay. Like on MailChimp?
Yeah, that's the most consistent things I have with my fans. I email them at least once a month when I'm promoting something or just talking to them, just so they know, like, we're in this relationship for the long haul and I want to nurture it and make sure I check on you, you check on me.
Yeah.
But, you do social media promotions. I'm not a big Facebook guy anymore. I used to be, but it's kind of become useless to me. I promote on Instagram still, Twitter a little bit. But my main thing is my social media. Yeah. My mailing list.
Your mailing list.
Yeah.
Is there a way that you think about your mailing list? I've sent one out every once in a while. It's something I need to get back on the horse with. But it can feel sort of, selfish, like me.
It feels like work a little bit.
And also like you're spamming people. So like, what's the way that you can stand behind it and like feel good about?
I make it as personal as possible.
Okay.
That way it's not just... Sometimes I'll send an email where I'm not promoting anything.
Yeah.
Just me saying, hey, how you doing? Happy holidays. What's happening with you? Yeah.
Right.
Sometimes I do that. Or sometimes I have a funny story and then I just send it to people on my mailing list. Okay. Here's your laugh for the day. Something like that.
Yeah.
Or if I have a YouTube video of something, I send it to them.
Right.
Yeah.
So you try to make it diverse enough.
Yeah. Yeah, because it is... And you still have people unsubscribe because that's just the nature of it.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, some people are like, all right, I'm no longer interested in this thing.
Right.
I mean, you can't take that too personal. That's just what it is.
Right.
The people who want to stick with it, they will.
It does suck, though, when you find, like, when you get up the courage and, like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to send my monthly thing. And then, like, you want to bask and, like, feel good that it's done, but then you get, like, 5 unsubscribe notifications.
Yeah.
You're like, fuck! These are 5 people who weren't turned off and are now turned off, and they've left me.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So you use an email list.
Yeah.
And then tell me about your pilot.
So my pilot...
What you're writing on spec. Or, yeah.
No. Well, spec means you're writing something off of a show that already exists.
Okay.
Mine is completely original.
Okay.
I wrote it based on the job I had in Utah. Because I think that's a very unique job, and I really enjoyed being there. And I think there's a lot of aspects of it that would make for a compelling TV show.
Yeah.
Because you have, on one side, you have adults who have a job.
Right.
And the other side, you have teenagers in an environment that's crazy. That's new to them. Here's how crazy it is. They have to teach us as staff a restraining course because sometimes the kids want to fight you because they don't want to be there. I had to restrain one kid for my 1.5 years of doing it. So it happens a little bit. So there's a lot of drama going on there. You have
there
teenagers.
Continuously for 1.5 years?
Mm-hmm.
So you lived in the mountains of Utah?
Yeah, I did one winter.
No way.
Well, I wasn't in the mountain for the entire time. The way the job work is you in for a week and then you're out in the regular world for a week.
Right.
So you go on shift on Wednesday and then you come back on Wednesday.
Right.
So from Thursday to Tuesday, you're off. You're just out in the world. You're eating regular food. You're not camping. You're chilling.
Right.
And then next Wednesday, you go back in.
Okay.
Yeah.
But so it wasn't 52 weeks a year, but that was still 26.
Yeah.
And that was...
Yeah. I was in the wilderness for half, probably more than half. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I know you said the months and you said the year, but I didn't put that together that it was more than like a summer.
Yeah. Way more.
Shit. So
I did a winter there.
Whoa, man.
One time, we slept in -7 degrees. That way you have to make a fire inside the shelter just to keep everybody warm.
Yeah.
The winter is high risk because you don't want the kids to get frostbites and things like that. So
right.
It's a lot of watching people. Sometimes you can't even camp because the snow is so deep.
Yeah.
You just stay in camp and keep finding wood to make fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice survival thing. It's It's a really cool experience. You try to get creative with things.
So, on the one hand, you've got adults who are at least every other week regular people.
Yeah. And then you have those kids. And then you have the administrative part of it. So you have the dynamics between the adults, their lives off the job and their lives on the job. That's also a lot of things to explore there. And you have teenagers who are learning how to be teenagers. And that's a very turbulent stage of life. And they're here because they fucked up their lives. They're doing all kinds of drugs. They're wasting their parents' money. I had a kid who got sent to the program because an Australian kid, he had a party in his rich parents' house and it just went crazy and caused his parents $60,000 worth of damage in the house because his friends just trashed the fucking house. So as punishment, like, you need to go to this place and learn how to be a better person.
Yeah, we're sending you from Australia. We're sending you basically halfway around the world.
Yeah. To reflect on what you've done.
In the woods.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a lot of insane stuff. And there were kids who were hooked on heroin. I've had that.
Yeah.
And it's a weird thing watching somebody detox in the woods. That's pretty crazy. Some just have some were adopted kids who never felt like they belonged. It's a lot of issues. Yeah. Yeah. Some kids were suicidal and you had to watch them with more intensity than the other kids.
Shit, this is a lot.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Did you get to see a therapist once a week? I mean, this feels like a lot. Also, for just the counselors
we got to
be around and managing
the therapist as we were the eyes and ears of the therapist. Because they see the kids once a week, so before they see the kid, you have to give them a report,
right? To
be like, this is how they've been behaving. This is what's happening with them. Yeah.
I just imagine that it would be helpful for you too, because I mean, that's got to
be. Yeah, I'm sure it would be, but we didn't have that luxury.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So you wrote this pilot.
Yeah.
Wow, man. And I'm sure.
Yeah, I think it'll make an excellent TV show.
Is it half hour?
Half hour.
Just for the sake of sharing influences, what were things? So was it just basically that you took this writing workshop, you wrote and produced your web series, and you were like, great, the next thing is a pilot, and then you just went straight into that? Or was there additional were there again any other books, any other videos, any other
I actually wrote the pilot before I wrote the web series. I'd written the pilot and then it was just there, like, as a thing that I have and can send to people as a possible TV show to develop when, like, I have a bigger name. Right. But I had to watch a lot of pilots just to see, because a pilot is a very crucial thing about it.
If you build the whole world, you've got to set it.
Right. And if the pilot doesn't capture an audience, you're fucked.
Right.
Usually a pilot can be the death of a life of a series. So I had to see what works. What's a good pilot? How much can you cram into one episode? But also it has to be a good, entertaining story on its own, but you also have to set up the world, but you also have to introduce these characters. There's just so much.
Oh yeah, the to-do list is insane.
Yeah. So Baskets was do you watch Baskets on FX?
No.
It's a Zach Galifianakis led show. Louis is actually a producer on it. I don't know if they still use his name on it, but yeah, the pilot for that show was really, really well done. It's a very quirky show. It's about Zach's character is a guy who wants to be a clown.
Right.
Which is such an offbeat premise, but they make it work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I probably have a difficult time watching that. Just as somebody who does clowning, which I feel like is a word that you really can't use.
You do clowning?
Yeah. I mean, have you seen my one-man show?
No. Oh, I was invited to it. I never got a chance to come. Yeah.
All right. Well, it happens every month, so you're not off the hook. On December 8th is the next one. But I mean, it's not like whiteface. It's not. Mm-hmm. It's not like, in a Barnum and Bailey like clown outfit. But there are no words in it. It's all like physical comedy.
Okay.
It's like it's very Charlie Chaplin style.
Nice. I love Charlie Chaplin.
But like that's like what Charlie Chaplin is doing is what now what would be called clowning. Mm-hmm. And within people who like study that's it's an art form. It matters. But then, I feel like the way that we talk about clowns in like regular person popular culture is like, there's it. They're just like clowns are creepy and they're weird. And there's not like really an attention to, what good clowning actually is.
Yeah.
Bill Irwin is our greatest living American clown. And he just shows it off Broadway all the time.
Okay.
He's had 2 great shows on Broadway. Anyway, if you're going to Google someone to be like, what is American clowning?
Okay. I'll check him out.
He's a great guy to look at.
What's his name again?
Bill Irwin.
Bill Irwin. Okay.
And he did a show. You can see the full length thing on YouTube called Regard of Flight. And
Regard of Flight.
Regard of Flight. It's from the 80s, I think. It's the whole PBS recorded the whole thing, and it's there, and It's really great. But my guess is that's not the way that Zach Galifianakis is pitching it.
I mean, you might like it actually.
Really?
Yeah, he went to clown school in France, and then he came back to America.
Zach did?
Yeah, his character. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh,
no, his character in the show.
Oh,
yeah. That clowning is the most important thing for him in the world, so he really cares about that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because clown school is like a real thing.
Yeah.
So, I guess because I've only seen the Subway ads that look kind of like
they're not
clown.
Making fun or shading on clowns. They actually have a deep reverence for it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now watch the pilot. I think you'll enjoy it.
Well, great. And you said it's a good pilot.
Really good pilot.
It's
an excellent pilot.
You were going to say what you got out of watching what Baskets, what that pilot was, what it gave you, or why you liked it.
That pilot, did in 30 minutes, I got to see Zach as a character, right? I got to meet his entire family. His mom happened. His wife happened.
Right.
His twin brother happened. And his job happened. In 30 minutes, it starts with him being in clowning school in France.
Yeah. And
then you fast forward for a couple months, he comes back to America. And then he's struggling. And then by the end, he finds a job at a rodeo as a clown, paying $4 an hour.
Yeah.
So all of that happens. He got married in France, and then he brought his wife back to America. It's very compact, yet very compelling.
Yeah.
For 30 minutes. And I think it builds the world. And I thought that was very impressive.
Awesome.
And it's very funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Just because now this is gnawing at me. 2 other clowns I'd recommend. American clowns. Avner the Eccentric is really good.
What?
Avner.
Avner the Eccentric.
The Eccentric is really good. And Bill Irwin now performs often with a guy named David Shiner, who's great.
David Shiner.
Yeah,
okay.
I'd still check out Regard of Flight. But
okay.
All of a sudden I started feeling guilty for the people I left out. So those are some other people.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So once you write the pilot, the episode, then it sounds like there's a book you need to have, a God book. What is that? What is
Bible.
That a Bible.
I call it a God book. Yeah, I mean that's what a Bible is.
Yeah, I guess. All right.
It's a God book. It's sort of something that lays out the plan for the show and the world of the show. So somebody who watches the pilot and wants to know more, if they want to make this show, so you can tell them, all right, here are the characters, here's the setting, here's what the show's about, here's the arcs for these characters, here's the kind of episodes you can expect, here's what I'm hoping to do in one season. Yeah.
I'm guessing that there's like a structure to creating a show Bible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, those are pretty available online. You can figure it out. And I also learned that from the class also. Okay. Yeah.
Cool. So, where can people find out more about you? So you have a great website. What's that address?
www.tanaeljoachim.com. It's my first and last name.com. I was able to get that domain name, so that's nice. On my website you'll find most things that I'm doing. I post my shows. My calendar is always updated. I'm gonna be out of town in January. I'm gonna be in San Francisco in January doing the Sketch Fest.
So jealous.
Yeah, it's very nice. I'm excited to be up there. It's a good city. Yeah, I'm just going to be working my hour for the next couple of months and possibly produce another season of my web series. So
cool.
Yeah, just staying busy.
Sweet,
enjoying the journey. Yeah.
And I'm assuming that by workshopping your hour, you mean workshopping pieces of it?
Yeah, just running it and making it as strong as I possibly can. Yeah.
How do you run the hour? Are there places that are booking hours that
you gotta make that happen? Unless you're a big name person, you have to go in the trenches and make that happen.
So you self-produce an hour?
Yeah.
Is that something you have to fundraise for and all that sort of on your own to like get the venue and then publicize it?
You have to do a lot of the work. Not necessarily fundraise, but you have to do a lot of the work. Yeah.
And that's just something like space venues that host it and you reach out to them and make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
Well, good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. This was fun. Yeah. I feel like we should shake hands.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to see it, but
it happened. Hey, guys. Just a couple quick things before you go. First off, thank you so much for listening. Stop Waiting Tables is a brand new show, so it means the world that you're here and that you've listened all the way to the end. So thank you. You can find out more about today's guest and check out a full list of all of the episodes that I've recorded on my website, www.alexmcurtis.com/podcast. Also, if you live in the New York area, feel free to pop by and say hello. I have a one-man show called Chalk, a silent comedy. That's chalk like you draw on a chalkboard, chalk. And that happens every month in the East Village at the Crane Theater. And if you're interested in coming to check that out, it's a really playful, imaginative show, and all the details about that are on my website as well. Again, I'm Alex Curtis, and this is Stop Waiting Tables. Happy listening, and until next time. Check, please. Hey there. All right, so thank you so much for hanging out all the way till the very end. So now this is the bonus clip with Tanael. So after our conversation about his work as a comedian, we moved into a conversation just about human stuff. So we were talking about how he navigates the entertainment industry and what are the things that he does to take care of himself so that he has gas in his tank and can just keep going, in the face of the highs and the lows and all that stuff. So we're talking about self-care, and he just talked about podcasts that inspire him, and he recommended the podcast Waking Up. So that's where we're going to join him right now. So the Sam Harris was his name?
Sam Harris podcast, yeah. The Waking Up podcast.
Waking Up.
Yeah.
You might like On Being with Krista Tippett. It's on NPR. It's an interview show, but she talks to some really wonderful thinkers.
Okay.
I'd additionally recommend checking it out maybe if you're looking for something like late at night or first thing in the morning.
Okay.
I only say that because her voice is so goddamn soothing.
Right.
So it's kind of nice when you're drifting on the edges of consciousness.
Right.
But the conversations are really wonderful.
Okay, cool.
So that's another nice food for thought podcast. And then what kind of meditation do you do?
Mindfulness.
Okay.
Yeah, just basic sort of watching your thoughts and being aware of them, kind of watching your breath as a point of focus and then letting your thoughts go, and then just it allows you to kind of be more aware of yourself. It can give you a little bit more insight into how your mind works. Yeah. I think there's 3 types, and that's the one I feel like is easiest for me.
Okay. And is there a resource you use for that, or like a way that you get into it?
I used to use this app called Headspace, but now I feel like it's almost weird to have an app for meditation.
I mean, that's how I feel, but I also understand
meditation
that
is a thing by itself, so I just do it without any electronic help.
Yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah.
But what I appreciate about the apps is that they're an approachable entry point.
Yeah.
And I guess as long as it's serving you, if you always use an app, that if it's doing good, then then run with it.
There's no need to change it.
But yeah, as someone who got into meditation, without an app, it feels. I understand, that looking at it sort of retrospectively, or being at the point where you don't need it and then you're like hearing about it.
Right.
It can feel sort of, you know, like counterintuitive, especially because apps feel so like current.
Oh God.
Like, techie.
It's the worst.
And you're like, but this whole thing is about unplugging. So needing to meditate on your device can feel odd. But so you've got this podcast you listen to, you meditate. Mm-hmm. Anything else you do self-care wise?
I see a therapist. I guess that's self-care.
Yeah. Oh no, it's 100% self-care. How long have you been seeing them?
3-4 months now. Is it that much? Maybe closer to 2-3 months. Yeah.
Okay, 2-3 months.
Yeah, I had a friend recommend him, a comedian. He sees a lot of comedians, so he kind of knows how we work, like most of our insecurities, most of our anxieties about show business. So he's a good guy for where I am in my life. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. So do you end up talking mostly about show business related stuff?
A little bit.
Really?
Yeah, it's mostly show business and personal relationships. Yeah.
Yeah. In my therapy, I've never brought show business into it. I mean, there's plenty there's plenty of weird shit to need to work out.
Yeah.
So it's probably a good idea. But yeah, that's something that hadn't even crossed my mind to exercise some of the career focused demons.
Yeah.
Probably good though. Not to pressure you in a weird way to like, have you had a breakthrough or any takeaways that any wisdom you can drop from your 2-3 months of self-exploration?
The main thing that we've both agreed on is like show business is weird because sometimes you attach your self-esteem to how well you're doing career-wise.
Yeah.
And it's a very dangerous thing to do. Like the most freeing thing you can do is to not attach your validation of material success with who you are as a person.
Yeah.
Because that's usually what happens. That's how, like, I've seen myself getting depressed over, like, things that I wanted to get that I didn't get. But it's like, this has nothing to do with you. And it's easier said than done. But to realize that this is your job, it's what you do, but it's so attached to you that it's very easy for you to conflate yourself with your showbiz career.
Yeah.
But they're very different things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything you're doing now to help you maintain that distinction?
I try to spend a lot of time with, not a lot, but like stay connected with my friends that aren't in showbiz. So that I know I have this life that's separate from this thing that I do. And I don't need to measure all of my life based on this thing that I do.
Right.
Just keeping healthy relationships. Yeah.
Yeah. There's in Martin Short's autobiography, he lays out 9 categories that he uses to gauge how well he's doing. But what I really appreciated reading that was to read somebody who's so successful, very intentionally measuring their life as a total life, like the human parts have very clear value and are accounted for.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's especially because, you know, for us in the entertainment industry, there's success is so ephemeral and you don't know how you're going to get it. And so there's all of this energy on like trying to hack the system or like figure out how, like what your in could be.
Yeah.
That it can feel consuming mentally.
Absolutely.
And so to intentionally put your focus on like, you know, no, I'm just going to think about my other friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of like with mindfulness, you know.
Absolutely.
Like, intentionally put my focus on my breath for a while. So setting aside time to be with your non-showbiz friends.
Yeah.
Is that the big one?
Yeah, it's the main thing that I found is helpful for me.
And do you put that on Google Calendar? Is that something that you have to
make but like for? we have a WhatsApp group, you know, WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just try to see each other as often as we can. Yeah.
Cool. So it's not like scheduled or anything like that?
No.
Okay. Because again, I just think about that for myself because being in this can be so all-consuming that also if this is all you're doing all the time, you only see your showbiz friends because you're always engaged in show business. And so I just find out it's hard to have friends in New York because everyone's here because they're ambitious. And everyone's always busy. And so
New York is the loneliest place I've ever lived in my life.
And it's millions of people.
Yeah. I mean, New York as a city has roughly the same amount of people as Haiti as a country.
Yeah.
As a fucking city, you know what I mean? And I've never been lonely in Haiti as I have been in New York City.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. So it's something, I have an accountability partner. We talk every week and set goals. And we have, different categories.
Oh, by the way, I have to leave soon.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we can wrap this up.
Okay.
But where we keep each other on track for things. And one of them is actually friend dates. That's something that I make it a conscious thing that I'm going to set time to be with friends, and if I don't, he checks in, and it's like, hey, have you made time for your regular people friends?
Yeah.
I mean, just like
friends add a lot of value to your life.
Yeah.